This almost turned physical outside a club. That's where 20 years of tension finally landed. Not in a booth, not in a comment section, not in a meme. A real-world confrontation where security stepped in, law enforcement got involved, and two men with serious history found themselves in the same orbit with nothing between them but pride. If you thought this was just two veterans arguing over a Versus battle, the club incident just told you everything you needed to know about how deep this actually runs. The tension between T.I. and 50 Cent didn't start in 2026. It started in 2007 when T.I. caught federal weapons charges and received what many considered a lenient outcome. Roughly a year in prison despite serious accusations involving machine guns and silencers. 50 never accused him directly in a courtroom. He did it in interviews, in lyrics, in subtle and consistent repetition. How does that math add up? That question stuck. The rat label attached itself to T.I.'s name not through confirmed evidence, but through 50's ability to keep suspicion alive, in a culture where reputation is currency and repetition becomes reality. They eventually spoke privately. Temporary peace. But the seed was already planted. It just waited nearly 2 decades to fully bloom. The 2026 reignition started with a Versus claim. T.I. went on podcasts saying he and 50 had privately discussed a battle, that he'd been given permission to announce it publicly. When he did, 50 acted like the conversation never happened. For T.I., that wasn't a scheduling issue. That was a character issue. He said publicly he no longer respected 50. In hip-hop, that word between veterans is a declaration, not a complaint. 50 didn't respond with a Versus date. He went back to 2007. Old Crime Stoppers footage resurfaced. Courtroom clips circulated. King Rat landed in the comments. A calculated twist on T.Y.'s own title, a name his son literally carries. The music conversation was finished. This was about credibility now. Then 50 changed the battlefield entirely by posting an unflattering photo of Tiny Harris with a short warning caption. A woman who had said nothing about any of this became the target. And that post didn't just provoke T.I., it activated his son. King Harris went live immediately. He fired directly at 50, then posted what appeared to be an image of Sabrina Jackson's headstone. 50's mother, who died in a fire in 1983 when 50 was 8 years old, a case that was never solved. That moment froze the internet. Not because it was typical trash talk, but because it touched the deepest wound in 50's origin story in front of millions of people. 50 responded with a frog meme and LOL. That calm wasn't peace, it was positioning. He's been running that play for over 2 decades. Provoke, wait for emotion, minimize with indifference, let the other side look unhinged while he looks unbothered. The narrative shifted from 50 crossed a line with Tiny to did King go too far almost overnight. Meanwhile, T.I. went to the booth. He dropped War, then The Right One, then What Bully, then Lessons. 4 diss tracks in less than a week. He made his position clear. He makes music, not memes. The bars were direct, personal, and consistent. He went after 50's image, his past beefs, his credibility outside of music. One side was recording, the other was posting AI images and joking that ChatGPT told him he didn't need to respond. That contrast built pressure. Then the paperwork arrived. King Harris posted what he claimed were federal documents connected to a 2009 investigation. Paperwork referencing an anonymous tip tied to the murder of Lowell "Lodi Mac" Fletcher, a G-Unit affiliate, and implicating 50 in communication with federal agents. The caption made the target obvious. "You've been calling my father a rat for 20 years. What is this?" The internet didn't wait for verification. Blogs ran it within minutes, podcasts dissected it, comment sections turned into courtrooms. The legal nuance, the difference between a confidential informant, a cooperating witness, and someone who made an anonymous tip, disappeared immediately in a culture where all of those things blur into one label. Similar documents had surfaced online before. The 2017 conviction of Jimmy Henchman for orchestrating Fletcher's murder was built on extensive federal evidence that didn't hinge on 50's cooperation according to court records. None of that context slowed the spread. Because in hip-hop, perception hits harder than court transcripts. The man who had spent nearly 2 decades weaponizing the snitch narrative against T.Y. was now being forced to answer the same question. Then, 50 wiped his Instagram clean. Every post about T.I. gone. Every post about Tiny gone. Every post about King gone. He joked about it, said his feelings were hurt, posted a jet photo, laughed it off publicly, but the timing was impossible to ignore. Paperwork drops, Feed disappears. That sequence doesn't read as casual in the court of public opinion, regardless of what the legal reality is. The man known for never backing down deleted everything at the exact moment federal allegations went viral. Some called it smart crisis management. Others called it retreat. Either way, it was reactive. And reactive is not where 50 Cent is supposed to be. For the first time in this feud, he wasn't controlling the frame. The Harris family had flipped it. And then came the club. Reports started circulating that T.I. had attempted to confront 50 Cent at a club appearance. Details varied by source, but the consistent elements were these. Tensions were high, words were exchanged, and things nearly turned physical before security intervened and law enforcement got involved. That moment changed the weight of everything that came before it. Because diss tracks are entertainment. Memes disappear in 24 hours. Paperwork is debated on podcasts, but two grown men moving toward each other in a public space with real history between them, that's not content anymore. That's consequence. Think about the trajectory. It started as a Verzuz disagreement, became snitch allegations, then wives and mothers got pulled in, then a deceased parent's grave appeared on Instagram, then federal documents circulated, then an Instagram wipe, and then a near physical confrontation with law enforcement present. That is not a rap beef that stayed in its lane. That is 20 years of unresolved tension finally running out of room to stay contained. And here's what makes the stakes so much higher than a typical feud. 50 Cent in 2026 is not the hungry rapper who dismantled Ja Rule in 2003. He's a television mogul. The Power universe alone has generated hundreds of millions in revenue. He has corporate partnerships, streaming deals, production company relationships, brand contracts. Every one of those has a reputation attached to it. An arrest, a viral clip, a credible federal allegation that refuses to die. Any of those things creates problems that no meme strategy can solve. T.I. is fighting a different battle. He's in comeback mode. First solo Billboard Hot 100 entry in over a decade, building toward what he's described as his final album. The diss tracks generated real attention and real streams. Conflict gives him visibility at a moment when visibility matters most, but he also has his own legal history, his own public image to protect, his own family that is now deeply embedded in a war that started over a Verzuz challenge. Neither of them can afford what happens if this escalates further. One real incident, one arrest, one fight that gets filmed, one moment that becomes the headline, doesn't just end a beef, it reshapes a legacy. And both of these men have spent decades building legacies that are bigger than any single moment of pride. That's what the club confrontation exposed. Not toughness, not dominance, the fact that pride had already outrun strategy on both sides. Ty walked toward 50 in public. That's not calculation, that's emotion. 50 deleted his entire Instagram after paperwork dropped. That's not confidence, that's damage control. Both moves revealed something the public positioning had been hiding. This is personal in a way that neither of them fully anticipated when it started. Rap beef is supposed to stay in the music, in the interviews, in the memes and the comment sections and the podcasts. It's supposed to generate streams and headlines and conversations like this one. The moment it almost turned physical outside a club with law enforcement present, it stopped being about who has the better catalog. It became about whether either of them is smart enough to recognize that some wins aren't worth the cost of claiming them. Once you involve wives, sons, a deceased mother's grave, alleged federal documents, and a near confrontation that brought police into the conversation, there is no clean reset. The question was never who won this round. The question is whether either of them walks away before pride turns into something that no amount of music or memes can walk back. Because in hip-hop, legacy is everything. And right now, both of theirs are standing at the edge of something that could define them permanently for the wrong reasons.